All right, we're talking about pirates today. I'm Mr. Terry, I'm a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. All right, a channel favorite and channel supporter, the Fat Electrician, has uploaded recently, and by the title that I'm looking at here, it looks like this is about the Barbary Wars. And this was a conflict that brought the United States of America, which was still a very new country here in the 1790s, up against pirates. Now, this event has largely been kind of brushed under the rug and kind of fallen into the fringes of American history that's taught generally. But something really important actually came out of this, and it came from the treaty as a result of this. In the treaty made with Tripoli, which is now Libya, the United States Senate unanimously approved a provision that said the government of the United States is in no sense founded on the Christian religion. And this has been used as precedent to say that there is a separation of Christianity and religion and state in the United States. However, the Barbary Wars does have some interesting content to it, and I'm excited to check out and see the Fat Electrician's take on this. All right, the original video is down below. Also want to plug his merch, so make sure you check that stuff out, and let's get started. All right, we got a 24-minute video from him, so we're going to be here together. Grab a snack, get a drink, and let's have some fun here.
Messing with American ships, so George Washington founded the United States Navy to do something about it. Yeah, the United States Navy was founded for the sole reason of hunting pirates.
Yarg.
Today we're talking about the Barbary Wars. Ladies and gentlemen, it is pretty much an ongoing internet joke that you do not mess with America's boats, you know, because of Operation Praying Mantis, that time that America decided they were going to sink half of Iran's navy.
I covered that video, it was great.
Hours.
I'll link it at the end.
And Vietnam, and World War II, and World War I, and the Spanish-American War, and the War of 1812. I guess if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you, this is the origin story of why you don't mess with America's boats. But first, a word from our sponsor, because this video is brought to you by my favorite underwear company, Sheath. Wait, hold on, I'm supposed to read a script for this one. Here's how to do it.
Dude, don't underestimate some good undies, all right?
Second to thank our favorite sponsor for today's show, which is Sheath Underwear. Sheath makes some... All
right, use this code. There it is down below. We'll go ahead. Incorporate some Breaking Bad in there. I'm not as creative with my ads as, you know, he is. Who's that? Is that the wifey? Married? We'll have to check that out, but hopefully he gets a cut from that from watching my video.
Discount code Fat Electrician for 20% off. Back to the video.
Whatever.
All right, here's the deal. For 3 centuries, pirates from the Barbary states of Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli
northern or southern Mediterranean
merchant vessels in the Mediterranean, steal all the goods, and imprison and turn all of the crew members into slaves. So why was this allowed to go on?
By the way, I'm sure you understand, piracy in the Mediterranean is millennia old. Always a big deal, as it's such a huge vehicle for commerce. And this is now, you know, in 1796, global trade too. Stuff coming out from the Mediterranean going to the Atlantic, which of course is going to mess with the Americans, because now you have American trade involved.
On for over 300 years. Well, the only navies powerful enough to stop these pirates at the time were the Spanish, the French, and the British. And they all came to the same conclusion that it would be cheaper to pay off the pirates, giving them a yearly tribute to not raid their ships rather than go to war with them.
That's just paying off your bully. That's paying off your bully.
Ships raided, which is fine. That's a good thing, I guess. But here's the catch with it that they may or may not have known at the time, but they definitely figured out somewhere along the way. Now the pirates are only raiding all the smaller nations. Okay, it's like
I need one of those
Walmart,
hats.
Target, and Amazon getting together, encouraging shoplifting, knowing that they can shoulder the financial burden, but it puts all the other mom and pop stores out of business, and they become the only ones selling goods. Except instead of retail stores, we're talking about entire nations. This goes.
That makes sense, because that's just because it's going to be so disruptive. The rich states are going to get richer, the poor are going to get poorer. And this is that time in history where that was really starting to settle itself out, where I guess early industrialization, I mean, the Industrial Revolution is really going to get going in the 1800s, but we're really starting to see that separation.
For literally hundreds of years, but America is still part of the British Empire, so they fall under their umbrella of protection, so it's never an issue. That is until the American Revolution started on April 19th, 1775, with the shot heard around the world, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and the famous story of a 78-year-old veteran.
Oh, I covered this. This was such a good story.
Shooting 3 redcoats as they
this was such a good story. Check it out. Check out his video, original, then you can come back to mine. But yeah.
Get off of our lawn. Fast forward to 1783, America wins the Revolutionary War, officially becoming its own country, and all of America's merchant vessels start flying the old red, white, and blue. And pretty much immediately, 1784, one of America's merchant vessels is captured by Barbary pirates from the country of Morocco. As an act of good faith for a new nation...
Geographically, you understand Morocco is very important because it's right there, basically at the Strait of Gibraltar, which is probably, if you think about it, the best place for pirates to go. Is it's a very narrow mouth between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean.
Spain actually pays off the pirates, gets the American vessel and all of its crew back, returns it to America, and then advises the American government, hey, you guys should start paying these guys off too. That's what all the big nations are doing. At which point, America's minister to France, a guy by the name of Thomas Jefferson, chimes in and he's like, no, absolutely not. I'm gonna go talk to him. Now, obviously I'm paraphrasing here, but basically Thomas Jefferson rolls up and he's like, hey, don't ever fuck with my boats ever again or else. At which point the Sultan of Morocco is like, I'm sorry, who are you? I'm Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of America. You know, we just kicked the British out of our entire country. We're our own thing now. I'm sorry, you fucking pilgrims did what now? We beat the British in war and now we are our own country. You mean to tell me that a bunch of colonial farmers with muskets went toe-to-toe with the largest military on the planet that is so good at war that they can literally wear high-vis red coats the entire time and still win, and you beat them? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I mean, yeah, I could probably just leave your boats alone from now on. That historically seems like it's going to be a really good idea. And that is the story of how Morocco came to be the first country to recognize America.
Literally the transcript from the meeting there. Yeah. I mean, it's always seen as, you know, such this big deal with the Revolutionary War. The best thing the Americans did with that is stretched it out. Right. They just, you know, the longer that war went on, the more it benefited the U.S. Even if they're losing most of the battles, which they were, war is going to become more unpopular. It's going to strain more and more resources for the British. And they're going to start to lose the priority, big picture priority of their colonies in North America in favor of colonies elsewhere, you know, like India or, well, holding on in Europe, you know, competing in Europe anywhere. So, yeah.
As its own sovereign nation by signing the Moroccan-American Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which is the first and longest lasting peace treaty in American history. At which point Thomas Jefferson is like, wow, that actually worked out perfect. I'm going to go to the other 3 Barbary states and tell them the same thing now. But of course there's going to be a catch with that. You see, there's 4 Barbary states, but Morocco's the only one that's actually truly independent, and the other 3 are just subservient branches of the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, so Thomas Jefferson and John Adams go to talk to
I mean, it's amazing. Ottoman Empire, their tributary states didn't have an incredible amount of influence that far west in North Africa. This is the era when the Ottomans are really starting to decline. They peaked in the 1600s. This is late 1700s, as a lot of the other interested groups in the Middle East, like Europe, are really starting to progress when it comes to military and economically. The Ottoman Empire kind of gets left in the dust for quite a bit. And where you really get to see that is you're going to see that starting to build up in, say, you know, Crimean War or like World War I, obviously.
Ambassador of Tripoli, and they're like, hey, can all the Ottoman Barbary states leave our boats alone? At which point the ambassador informs them, absolutely not. You see, we're part of the Ottoman Empire. We don't need to listen to you. We're not scared of you guys. And it is our official stance that, and I quote, it was written in the Quran that all nations which had not acknowledged the prophet were sinners, who it was the right and duty of the faithful to plunder and enslave. You know, unless they give us money, of course. Everything's got a price, apparently. So Thomas Jefferson is like, well, okay, we're going to war then. And that's when John Adams is like, whoa, 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 calm down. Let's just pay the tribute so that our ships can be fine. We already disbanded.
I mean, again, would you look at this as a tribute or ransom? Like paying ransom. I use that analogy of paying off your bully when I talk about tribute used in history. Literally, you're just paying to not get attacked. You're getting nothing beneficial, right? You're not getting anything. Nothing's helpful for you other than just being able to do the thing, you know what I mean? Which doesn't need to happen, but yeah.
The Continental Navy, after winning the Revolutionary War, we don't have a Navy to fight these guys. We just have to give them the money. So that's what happened.
It's true.
For
the Navy sucked.
10 years, America would pay tribute every year to these 3 remaining Barbary states, and every year they wanted more and more money, and eventually even that wasn't enough because Algiers began attacking American vessels anyways. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that for the first time in American history, somebody has fucked with one of America's boats, and they're not immediately sorry about it. yet. The president at the time, George Washington, goes to Congress and pretty much tells them what's going to happen, because at this point in time, George Washington is basically the king of America. Nobody actually knows if he's going to step down from presidency or not. So he's like, hey, guess what? You guys are going to pass the Naval Act of 1794, establishing the United States Navy. And at the very top of that document, it very clearly states that the purpose we are building the United States Navy is so that we can combat Algerine corsairs, which is just a fancy word for state-funded pirates. Yeah.
By the way, going back to Washington there, and he was talking about if they don't know if he's going to step down and stuff. I'm kind of the mindset, and I've heard some other history teachers. I know I've heard Mr. Beat say this and stuff, which was maybe Chris from VTH as well. I can't remember which one, but saying one of the best things that George Washington probably did was not set this precedent that you were going to have these like lifelong presidents, because there weren't term limits then. But yeah, stepping down, basically setting a precedent that's not necessarily going to be the case, that these are going to be temporary positions. Right. And I think it set a precedent, because if you had the first president just go the rest of his life and many terms, that might be something that keeps going. And then United States maybe slips back into, monarchical rule of some kind, or some kind of dictatorship. You know what I mean? What do you guys think about that idea, though, about that? Washington should really be heralded for that.
Yes, I'm telling you that the founding document of the most powerful navy the world has ever seen at the top specifically states the sole reason for their creation is to hunt down and destroy pirates that had the audacity to fuck with one of America's ships.
That's pretty much what all the Europeans did when they bolstered up their navy. Their navy bolstered up, all of them, Britain, France, all that, as trade was becoming more and more important, right, in kind of the modern age. Goes hand in hand. You can't have that. You can't have a successful trade network, overseas trade network, without protection. It just doesn't work very well, because piracy is very lucrative.
Find out portion of the story.
Sorry, we're going too slow. I need to listen
more. The
more.
building of 6 enormous frigates covered in guns to go fight these pirates. Fast forward to when the frigates are done. It takes a couple years. It is now 1798, and George Washington has decided to step down from power, allowing for an election to happen, and we are now into the second president of America, John Adams. And John Adams decides he would rather keep paying tribute.
Disappointed!
America just created
What
the
a
Navy,
wuss.
spent $1 million creating all these
because he was
frigates,
short,
and now John
really
Adams
short.
isn't going to use them for their intended purpose. Obviously,
Wasn't he
a lot of
really
people are
short,
upset,
Adams?
including his own vice president, Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson, the vice president at the time, immediately begins campaigning to run against the sitting president in the next election. And one of his biggest platforms is that he is going to go fight these pirates rather than pay them tribute. And his slogan for this is, and I quote, "Millions in defense before a cent in tribute." Okay, just so we're clear.
By the way, what do you guys think of back in those days? You know how in those days, in early American democracy, how the vice president was chosen? It was at the beginning the runner-up in the election, which seems so crazy, right? Because it's like, I don't know if that was supposed to appease the people that didn't get their candidate, but like, does that also mean that they didn't really envision necessarily the president and the vice president really getting along and being on the same page with policy and stuff like that? That didn't last very long, but
Jefferson's platform for running for president is, I'm going to spend millions of dollars in defense, which might as well be hundreds of billions of dollars at that point, because America no longer negotiates with terrorists. And I'm pretty sure my high school English teacher would refer to this as foreshadowing. So Thomas Jefferson wins the election. The entire world finds out that he's going to be the third president of the United States of America. And then on March 4th, 1801, the day of his inauguration, he receives a letter from Yusuf Karmanali, the Pasha of Tripoli. If you don't know, Pasha is like the dictator, the king, the president, the main dude in charge.
Kind of operated independently again.
The guy who just ran an entire presidential campaign on, I'm going to go fight pirates, is thinking in his head, like, maybe this guy found out that I'm about to send a navy over there to beat him up, and he's going to send an apology. Maybe he wants to sign a peace treaty like Morocco did. This is already working out great. I might not even have to send my navy over there. He opens the letter, and Pasha Yusuf Karmanali has decided that he is going to poke the Pilgrim King, because he is now demanding that because of the new administration, the United States owes him an extra $225,000 in tribute. And Thomas Jefferson is pissed.
You're trying to get crazy with us. I'm local.
Originally, Thomas Jefferson was going to have to go to Congress, get permission to activate the Navy to send him over there to fight these pirates, but not now. He's so mad we're activating the Rainbow Shortcut to ass-whooping land, and Pasha Yusuf is going to have some consequences immediately because he's sending the Navy today. But like I said, it takes a literal act of Congress to send the U.S. Navy over there on a military mission, so Thomas Jefferson is like, that's fine, we just won't send them on a military mission. Fill up one of our frigates with a bunch of gifts and peace offerings for Pasha Yusuf, and then give it a nice healthy escort of other frigates to defend it, and send them on their merry way to deliver the gifts. Right after he gives the commander of the United States Navy the standing order that he is also to defend any American citizen or ship from any potential aggression. Not aggression, potential aggression. If he thinks that somebody else might be thinking about doing something aggressive,
take them out, take them down, do your stuff.
So the Navy sets sail. They're gone. They're en route.
84.
Thomas Jefferson's sitting in his office, and he comes to the realization, man, I'm pretty sure these pirates are going to attack him. But if they don't, they're actually going to end up giving Pasha What's-His-Nuts a bunch of these gifts. Right. And I can't have it. So he whips out the old quill and
win-win situation.
Letter back and sends that off. And that letter basically reads, hey, America's done giving you tribute for the rest of forever. F off. And obviously the letter makes it there first, at which point Pasha goes to the American consulate building and chops down the flagpole with the American flag on it, which in that part of the world is how you declare war. So the U.S. Navy shows up off the coast of the Barbary States. The pirates attack them because they've already declared war. The U.S. Navy defends themselves. Word gets back to America. Congress then is like, oh, hey, we're at war. We're going to go ahead and give Thomas Jefferson permission to use the United States Marine Corps at his discretion. And this is why, to this day, the United States Marine Corps is the only branch of the U.S. military that can be sent and deployed anywhere in the world without congressional approval. So for the next 2 years...
Doesn't that seem so unconstitutional? It's like... I mean, Congress already hates the fact that this still happens all the time, right? Not getting, like, no one declares war anymore. United States never really does anymore. You have these peacekeeping missions and all these other things you saw it happen to, like, Vietnam, etc. But yeah, basically ways to get around it, get around Congress.
Years, the U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps set up a naval blockade and just go on a pirate hunting extravaganza until October of 1803, when the USS Philadelphia would get hung up on an uncharted reef right off the coast of Tripoli. The pirates seize this opportunity, they attack the USS Philadelphia, board it, take the crew hostage, and then over the next couple months they were able to repair it enough to get it back into the harbor at Tripoli, where they then anchored it in place and used it as fixed artillery because it had way more guns than any other vessel they had. Cue our first main character, Stephen Decatur, the commander of the USS Enterprise, America's unofficial flagship. He decides that he's going to don his plot armor, take the USS Enterprise out, and acquire himself a pirate ship, which he does. He then takes that pirate ship and the USS Enterprise and sails both of them to Sicily, where he hires 5 Sicilian mercenaries that know how to speak Arabic. They then sail back to Tripoli, where Decatur and 80 Marines are going to go below deck of this pirate ship, which has now been christened the USS Intrepid, as the 5 mercenaries are going to sail directly into the heart of the harbor, pretending to be Barbary pirates. They then go directly to the USS Philadelphia. 80 Marines and Stephen Decatur run out, kill the entire crew of pirates that are on the USS Philadelphia, and reclaim it. Unfortunately, the USS Philadelphia is too damaged.
Definitely, like, setting the stage of what you think of with Marines, some of those amphibious invasions like that, where you can, you know, use a lot of secrecy and cover and a lot of just logistics, I guess, with that, and then go in and do the job.
To actually be used as a ship ever again. At which point,
this is very much before the Marines as we know them really were around too. It's still settling.
Nobody can. Deprive the enemy of nice things. I'm pretty sure Sun Tzu said that. So that's exactly what they do. They light the USS Philadelphia on fire. They're positive it can't be put out, and then they bounce. Not a single American is injured, and Stephen Decatur is hailed a hero because he has now led what is, in my opinion, America's first special operations mission. So now that that's taken care of, the problem at hand.
I think that's important. That's. I can't think. You can't think of anything better. Anything really happened, and like you would say in the Revolution, that was quite like that. Like. Not really, and we're before, you know, anything like 1812 or anything. You know, not that anything would have looked like that, but yeah, it is. It's kind of like establishing though, like what the Marines are going to be known for, right? It can go back to that.
hand is that
Special
the crew
ops.
of the USS Philadelphia is still being held hostage by the Barbary pirates, and they want a ton of money in exchange for them back. However, America no longer negotiates with terrorists, and that's not an option. Cue our next two main characters, William Eaton and Presley O'Bannon. And before you ask, yes, Presley O'Bannon, as in the USS O'Bannon, the Fletcher-class destroyer from World War II that sank a Japanese submarine with potatoes. So they go in and they pitch their idea of
Have I
how
done a
they're
video
gonna
on
get the
that?
crew of the USS Philadelphia back.
Have anyone
and
done a
it
good
is,
video on it? I
by
could
every
check out?
definition, a special operations mission. Basically, they want to take themselves, 2 dudes, plus 6 Marines for a total of 8 guys, and they're going to get dropped off in Egypt, because in Egypt is Yusuf Karmali's brother that is living in exile because Yusuf kicked him out because he is technically the rightful heir of Tripoli. So they're going to get...
By the way, this is how you get around the, really tipping off Congress that their rights, constitutional rights, could be infringed upon when it comes to declaration of war, is you keep it small like this, right?
That guy and all the buddies that are loyal to him, like 500 men, and then they're going to march them through the desert to Derna, where they are then going to use them to fight and take over the city and exchange the city for the crew of the USS Philadelphia.
Is this our first American coup as well, to like top over a political regime? It's like the first of many. Is this the one? We're getting a whole bunch of firsts in American history. This is like beta mode, like you got the beta version of the game now. We're trying to build it up. We're going to work out all the bugs, all the kinks right now. That's what's going on.
And upon hearing this ridiculous plan, the U.S. military leadership is like, whoa. You want to take a small contingency of men, be dropped off in a foreign country, meet up with a rebel leader who already has a bunch of men, and then convince him that you're going to help him overthrow a current dictator, and then he can be the new dictator, and basically we're
the first of
using
many
other people to fight other people that we don't like to benefit us. And Presley O'Bannon and Eaton are like, yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. And the government is like, this is a terrific idea. I mean, we're probably never, ever going to do anything like this ever again. And we're not going to have an entire branch of special forces that specializes in it. Sorry. Anyways, that's exactly what they do.
We actually created one. It's called the CIA after World War II, and then just did it straight up through the government before the creation of the CIA. Oh, man.
They get dropped off in Egypt.
There's no going back after this.
You want to go overthrow your brother?
Military
cool, grab your
coups.
guys, let's go. Somewhere along the way, the Marines also picked up 50 Greek mercenaries as they all began
they hate the
marching
Ottomans, too.
500 miles through the Libyan desert to get back to the Tripolitan.
Greeks
coast.
hate
And this
these
march
guys.
through the desert takes 50
Perfect group
days,
to
and
pick
it is a
up.
complete shit show because somewhere along the way they start running low on supplies and they have to start rationing. And then some people get mad. There's accusations because the Greek guys are Christian, Hamet's guys are Muslims. There's fighting amongst themselves, and there's these 8 Marines standing in the middle, desperately trying to keep them from killing each other as they march through the desert. So despite multiple mutiny attempts and a ton of fights, the Marines were able to keep this group together enough to make it through the Libyan desert till they arrived at the coastal city of Bamba. Once they get there, they meet up with the USS Argus that gives them a bunch of supplies so they can start eating food again, and they give enough money to pay off the Greek mercenaries. Then Eaton decides that he's going to send a letter over to the governor of Derna right next door, because remember, we can't attack unless they're potentially aggressive. Okay, so he sends a letter and is basically like, hey,
that's where you just
I'm
make
gonna
up
march my
crap.
army through the middle of your town to go kill your boss on my way to Tripoli. Can I have some safe passage and maybe some food? The governor of Derna sends a letter back that says, my head or yours, which sounds potentially aggressive enough. So they begin making the plan for the ground attack. Hamet and his men are going to take the governor's palace, and the Marines and the Greek mercenaries are going to take out the harbor fortress. But to do that, they're going to need a cannon from the USS Argus, so they're going to meet up with it, go get this cannon, and prepare for their attack. Cut back to Stephen Decatur. While all this has been happening, there's still been a naval battle in the Mediterranean the entire time, and Stephen Decatur is on an absolute rampage, because after he captured his first pirate ship, he would receive word that his brother, James Decatur, had been mortally wounded by one of the pirate ship's captains, who was pretending to surrender before shooting his younger brother. Upon hearing this, Decatur immediately gives command of the new captured vessel to one of his men, leaves a couple guys with him, and takes off to track down this pirate ship that just killed his brother. So they chase down this pirate ship, they pull up right next to it, and before the crew has time to do any boarding procedures, like break out the planks, tie some ropes to the other ship, all that stuff you see in the movies. Nah, Stephen Decatur jumps into the enemy ship and starts killing pirates immediately. 9 Marines, seeing that happen, like, oh shit, we're doing this. So they jump onto the pirate ship too and start throwing down, at which point the pirate ship veers off.
I gotta go out. I'm gonna go back to the story. I just wanted to see this painting more because it's like exactly what I was thinking of with some pirate movie. Look at these sailors and the American dudes and ching 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 ching, just like straight up boarding a ship like this, fighting the Ottomans. Wow.
They jump onto the pirate ship too and start throwing down.
How many of you have ever heard the Barbary Pirates and the Barbary Wars before? I don't think I ever did. I don't think even I can't remember in in college, I took, like the basic required US classes. I took a lot more like world history type electives when I got to do electives for my history degree. Didn't take really many US ones. So I took like the basic courses. I don't remember it being talked about. I'm sure I read it because I read the text, but like the events of it, I don't know. I never did it. Was this just me? And then I taught US history for, I taught US history for many years before I started teaching AP, world history, and we never brought it up really either. So is this something that needs to be talked about more? Is it consequential enough, or is it just kind of a cool side story? And I told you about the Treaty of Tripoli that comes out of this. Another thing I never really understood precedent of until really recently too. So, yeah.
At which point, the pirate ship veers off and breaks away from Decatur's ship. It is now 9 Marines and Stephen Decatur versus over 30 pirates on this vessel, and 30 is not going to be enough. Stephen Decatur kills multiple pirates, including the captain that had slain his brother,
swords,
officially avenging his brother's death, capturing that vessel as well.
Dude, he was amped up.
Absolutely furious that his brother died, and he continues to go on a rampage, capturing another pirate ship and destroying 3 more over the coming weeks. Cut back to the men on the ground. Eaton and O'Bannon have been getting their battle plan ready this entire time. They just had their men go get a cannon off the USS Argus because they really need this cannon if they're going to be able to pull off this mission. So they're ready to attack. The US Navy gets into formation and they are going to bombard the entire city of Derna while they launch this attack. Despite that, there's over 2,000 men loyal to Pasha Yusuf that are going to defend it, and they are heavily outnumbered. So Navy starts bombarding the shore. Hamet and his men take off to go attack the governor's palace, and Eaton, O'Bannon, the Marines, and the Greek mercenaries begin launching their attack on the harbor fortress. They open up with the initial cannon fire, which is going to be vital to be able to break through the enemy lines and establish their foothold. They fire the cannon. As they go to reload and fire it again, they realize that they had accidentally forgot to take the ramrod out of the cannon and shot that at the enemy too. Now the cannon's completely out, and they're kind of like, oh shit, what do we do? What do we do? And Presley O'Bannon just charges into battle as the other Marines follow behind him and the Greek mercenaries behind them.
Dude, look at this dude's painting. There's some like cool art from the Barbary Wars. Holy crap. Dude, look at, I don't know if you can see my mouse very well. This guy, I don't know if he got sniped or what, but like, these are some sick paintings.
So quickly and so violently that they're able to overrun the entire enemy fortress before anybody really knows what's going on. And Presley O'Bannon becomes the first American ever to raise the Star-Spangled Banner over a foreign battlefield. This battle,
so many
firsts,
of the
Tripolitan coastal city of Derna, is enshrined in Marine Corps history in the Marine Corps hymn with the line "From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli." And it is also where the Marine Corps would get their first nickname ever, because the 7 Marines present for this battle fought so hard and so violently that they simply became known as the Leathernecks, referring to the leather collar that they wore around their neck to protect it from slashes from pirate swords. So Yusuf's men end up getting beaten back and are forced to retreat to Tripoli, at which point the Marines, the Greeks, and Hamet and his men all consolidate, figure out what happened. Hamet and his men were able to take over the governor's palace, and after the taking of the city of Derna, Hamet awards his very own sword to Presley O'Bannon as a gift for how valiantly he fought in battle. And this is the Mameluke sword, the same sword that is on the Marine Corps uniform today. So,
wow, I did not make that connection. My dad was a Marine, and
this is the Mameluke.
He had one of these swords because they're all issued. They're ceremonial. Yeah, that's the exact one, and they are so cool. And that's cool. Now I'm gonna actually, I got to tell him about where that came from, ceremonially. So. Cool.
Same sword that is on the Marine Corps uniform today. So now Yusuf consolidates his military, sends an enormous army back to Derna to try to take it back over, and they're kind of just sitting on the outskirts of the city, waiting for the right moment to attack. Eaton and O'Bannon are writing correspondence to the US military in the chain of command like, hey, we took this entire city with like 8 Marines, give us some reinforcements, we're gonna go take Tripoli next, and then we'll just overthrow this entire country. This goes on for over a month, and they defend the city multiple times from attacks from Yusuf's men, and eventually eventually, Eaton receives a letter informing him that he is to stand down and just leave because American diplomat Tobias Locke has struck up a deal with Yusuf Karmanali. And apparently he struck up this deal with absolutely nobody's permission, because the deal is America is going to pay Yusuf Karmanali, the pirate king, $60,000.
Yeah, another thing.
In exchange, we are going to receive the
Constitutionally
USS Philadelphia
protected
back, as well as a peace treaty that they are going to leave American ships alone from now on. So yeah, everybody's pretty pissed off about it, from Thomas Jefferson, Presley O'Bannon, William Eaton, Stephen Decatur. They're all furious that we are now giving $60,000 to this pirate king, as opposed to
it's like, what was the point of all that?
The entire city of Tripoli, or at a minimum using the fact that they're holding Derna and use that as leverage to exchange. But whatever, the war's over, I guess, for now. So the peace
I was gonna say they break the treaty, don't they?
treaties were signed in 1805. Now, fast forward 7 years, 1812. The War of 1812 happens. Okay, if you don't know, the War of 1812
Thought it ended up being broken
this, but
at some
the reason that it started is that Great Britain wanted to have more control over the seas and trade, because America was getting too much, because America was no longer getting attacked by pirates, because we just beat them in a war now too. So Great Britain launches another war against America. During this war, they encouraged the Barbary pirates to start attacking American vessels again. And honestly, it works out pretty good for the pirates, at least for a little while, because the American Navy is too busy to worry about them because their hands are full with the British Navy. Fast forward 2 years, 8 months later, the War of 1812 ends. Now, luckily for the Barbary pirates, Thomas Jefferson is no longer president at this point. We are on to America's 4th president. Let me check my notes here. James Madison. If you don't know, James Madison is one half of what is referred to as the Forefathers dynamic duo, and the other half is his best friend of all time, Thomas Jefferson. I don't know if you figured this out yet at this point in the story, but Thomas Jefferson hates pirates. So sitting president James Madison, being the homie that he is, looks over at now Commodore Stephen Decatur and says,
"Go get him, Tiger."
He then proceeds to assemble the largest U.S. naval fleet ever at this point in time and sails directly to the Barbary coast. He then immediately tracks down Algiers' flagship, the Mashuda, takes it out, captures over 400 members of its crew and the ship itself. He then proceeds to take all of his gunboats directly to Algiers, park them in the port, and say, here's the deal. You're going to surrender, and you're never going to collect tribute from anyone ever again, or I'm going to overthrow your entire country. Obviously, they take the first option, at which point Decatur's like, okay, cool, next order of business. You're also going to pay me back for all the U.S. merchandise that you plundered during the War of 1812. And they're like, okay, here you go. They give it to him. He then proceeds to sail his fleet next door to Tunis and tell them the exact same thing, ordering them to sign a peace treaty, never raid an American vessel again, and then collects a bunch of money. He then sails them.
He's literally going the whole the North African coast, just like pissed, just banging on the door. Hey, pay us off now. You owe us. We're doing the bullying now. Flip the script
again to Tripoli and does the exact same thing, collects all this money, gets the peace treaties. The Barbary pirates never mess with America ever again. Decatur and his fleet sail back home, and he tells the government what happened. The American government is blown away at the results that Decatur was able to achieve. When asked how he managed to not only get peace treaties without too much violence, but also get a bunch of money and concessions on top of it, all Decatur said was, peace was achieved through the mouth of our cannons, at which point he was given the nickname the Conqueror of the Barbary Pirates. And
I'm thinking like this is like Teddy Roosevelt eventually coming around a century later, and speak softly but carry a big stick, right? As the United States Navy, the 1800s, that was it. That was how you do diplomacy.
With the rest of the world seeing a new country in its infancy stand up.
Reminds me too of what's going to happen here in about 50 years with Japan, when Commodore Perry shows up, right, and with gunships and being like, hey, y'all need to open up now. And they're like, no. Shogun's like, nah. And they're like, well, go ahead and look behind my shoulder here and look in your harbor. We got a whole bunch of gunboats there. So like 1800s was that era.
Against,
and this is setting off the
and winning
the precedent for
doing it too, and everybody started fighting back and quit paying tribute to the Barbary pirates. And in the coming years they would fade into nothing as their 300-year reign of terror had come to an end. So in conclusion,
Damn.
the moral of the story is please,
You already
for the
said
love of God, do not mess with America's boats. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out.
All right, final thoughts. So I always like to put a pinned comment down with like a question so you guys can put some feedback in and see each other's. I think I want to put in this one, should the Barbary Wars be talked about more? Now, I'm not going to take the easy way out because, you know, anytime you say that, like this thing needs to get talked about more in history, this thing needs to get talked about more in history. Remember, there's a finite amount of time. Okay, you insert this, maybe you take a day on this in your class. What needs to come out? Right? You got to replace it with something. What's being taught? What's being, which one, what topic in American history is having too much talk about it, or it's too excessive that you can take away time from and insert something like this? What would be justified in taking out? Again, a day. You need a day for this, right? Anyway, or are we good just leaving the Barbary Wars to entertaining YouTubers like Fat Electrician? All right. Hey, at the beginning of the video, I was telling you guys also about the biggest impact. You didn't really get into it, but the Treaty of Tripoli, how it's become a huge deal. One of the effects here is in that treaty, from what I understand with it, they wanted, you know, there was this misapprehension between, you know, like Muslim states like here in North Africa and with kind of the Christians of, you know, Europe and the Western world. We have crusades and all this stuff. And one of the things that both sides found out is oftentimes with agreements and just general understandings of each other, the different groups, you know, Christians versus Muslims, will interpret things and interpret law through the lens of their religions. Okay. And one of the things I was trying to be kind of like bring down that apprehension in the treaty was trying to agree that religion would not be this like official position of which they could, you know, change the meaning of treaties and stuff like that. So like the United States, when in that to show that, right, it goes to the Senate with the treaty and was voted unanimously. And the wording in there, like I said, was again essentially, the United States government in no sense was founded by the Christian religion. And that's kind of the context of that. But that's been used as precedent where there's been a lot of gray areas about the role of religion and stuff like that, and constitution and separation of church and state. And that's often one that's been gone to as an official government position put out that is not an official Christian state. Anyway, that's been one of the biggest effects about that you see come out of this. So, but man, a whole bunch of other firsts. This actually was a lot more influential to future American policy than I thought before. So good job on Fat Electrician bringing up that out and his entertaining style. So I definitely learned a lot there. Put down some comments down below what you think of this story. And with that, we'll see y'all next time. Bye.